Hey everyone, this is Clinton Bonner for the Uprisor podcast. I'm joined today. I've got a special guest, the Associate Vice Chancellor, which is a pretty cool name, Paul Roben out at UCSD. That's, for those who don't know, University of California, San Diego, not a bad campus. And we're going to have a great discussion really around the ecosystem and creating the right environments in order to basically breed entrepreneurs and breed innovation. I'm excited to dive into this with Paul. Paul, looks like you got a lovely day. I know San Diego typically has lovely days, but you're outside, it's sunny. How's it going for you today?
It is going fantastic. It's always a beautiful day in San Diego.
That's
One
you
of
know,
the
even
nicest places in the world to live, right?
exactly. And here I am in Connecticut, but I blame myself. We have 50 plus, 50 states plus other territories, and I'm in the Northeast. So this is shame on me. But you're doing
Well,
it well. You're doing it right. And we're really excited to have you on the Uprisor podcast. So Paul, had a chance to chat with you the other day a little bit, and I was really interested to go deeper into a number of things. On
mhm.
the Uprisor podcast, we focus on innovation, we focus on future of work, and really kind of network effects and how people can tap outside talent, and either if that's remote talent or work within networks, so they can basically advance faster, connect dots more quickly, bring new ideas to market, learn learn through experimentation faster, and then ultimately succeed and bring innovation forward. And when I got to learn more about you and the program that you chair out at UCSD, I was like, oh man, Paul's doing all these things in an academic environment and having incredible results. So first and foremost, I'd love to hand the mic to you. Can you explain to folks, what the program at UCSD is all about, what you focus on, and maybe hint at some of the impact that you're seeing, the metrics that you measure? So first, Paul, what do you do out at UCSD?
Sure. So my role is to head up what we call the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. And the primary function of this group is to really implement the Chancellor's plan for economic and social development in our region. Right. So the Chancellor developed back in 2014 a strategic plan for the entire campus. Obviously, that revolves considerably around education and research, but it also has huge factors in there for community development, economic development, social development in our regions. And so I would say that the function of my office really is as one of the units on campus, which is charged with implementing that. So what does that mean? Well, there's two areas that we really concentrate on. There's talent and there's technology, right? When you're talking about economic and social prosperity, really those are the two things, the two major buckets where a large university contributes to the region that it's in. So in technologies, I think that's pretty obvious. We're one of the largest research institutions in the country. We do over $1.4 billion of research, and we want to ensure that all of that effort and public money that's gone into developing it becomes products and services and so on for the general public. But I think what you're talking about here today more is the talent side.
Hmm.
People, I hope, appreciate that universities are one of the major drivers of talent in the workforce in a region, particularly high skilled talent. In San Diego, that's very much around life sciences, tech, wireless communications, and so on. Now, what does that mean to develop talent? Well, again, a university does a number of different things, right? It gives the specific skills required by people to be able to do their jobs. So that's why you go to an engineering and you get an engineering degree. But we also are there to develop the core skills, the soft skills in any individual to allow them to be successful contributors to society. And that's really the end of the spectrum that I work on. How do you not just give people the sort of the hard skills that they need for a particular job, but how do you develop within them the confidence and the ability and the creativity to be positive contributors to society? And that really is innovation, right? And it really is entrepreneurship. And it doesn't matter if these students go off and start companies or work for the government or work for GE or some huge company. We are trying to equip them with all of those skills that are going to enable them to be successful in their own right, but also then to contribute so that we advance society. So that's kind of, broadly what we do, and I can certainly get into some more of the details in terms of programs and so on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's the kind of rabbit hole that I want to go down is it certainly is the talent side. So thank you for recognizing that. And I think it's the concepts around those core skills. I think that'll be really interesting for people listening in and hearing, hearing how your program is set up to deliver these. And what comes to mind for me is, right now we're recording this, and yes, we're on separate coasts, and you've got the better weather. We've established this, but we are both doing this, amidst coronavirus, amidst a time where it is, what is today, April 16th, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly the Northeast is very heavily locked down. I know California, I'm sure you're homebound as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people are going to remote work, and so many people are now entering this new way of doing virtual work, and with virtual teams and doing things like this, is communicating in new and different ways that are a little bit different, especially for a university where maybe you're used to getting people physically around tables and creating that physical environment there as well. So I'd love for you to kind of expand upon some of those core skills, and how do they, like, can you identify some of those core skills, like what in particular are you trying to get out of people in the first
Mm-hmm.
place, and recognizing someone to kind of get that fire going for those core skills, and then how do they translate also if this new way of work might stick around for quite a while, or a hybrid way of work just might be the way of the future, because obviously people can work remote, people can be very effective from a long distance. I'd love to hear more from you on the development of those core skills, and kind of what you focus on with the individuals that you're trying to kind of forge into entrepreneurs.
Sure. I mean, you've brought up an awful lot in there.
Sorry.
Um, but no, I mean, it's great that you've kind of brought up this, we're in the middle of a or global emergency, not
Mm,
just a national emergency, obviously. And, out of every crisis, there is an opportunity. What the crisis that we're currently in has highlighted is the rapid changing nature of work. Um, I think it's accelerated it. Obviously, we all were told to go home and to work from home.
yeah.
Um, but it's not something that wasn't happening already, right? I mean, the nature of work has been changing for decades. And in a broader sense, this crisis has really brought home to us at the university, as it has to all universities, the changing role that universities play in helping to develop, create the workforce that is needed in today's environment. So, while obviously this is a crisis, and I certainly don't mean to diminish it in any way, it's certainly an opportunity as well. And it's forcing us to operate in new and different ways. Um, the types of skills, that you're talking about, they're really about adaptability, about leadership, about being able to work in uncertain and risky environments, bringing to that creative thinking, critical thinking, the ability to build teams around solutions and ideas, the ability to communicate, which is really highlighted in the current time, because how we're communicating. I mean, I'm sitting here on my back porch, right? You're sitting in Connecticut. So it's obviously accentuated at the moment. But communication is going to change more and more rapidly. And out of this crisis, we're actually looking at new frameworks and new technologies now to allow us to communicate. I don't think the technology is quite there yet to be able to completely substitute for personal interaction, but I certainly think it's getting there. So those are the types of skills that we concentrate on. How we build programs around that. There's a couple of core principles. One is experience. You will only be able to learn these types of core skills through experience, through trying it out in some sort of a supported environment that will allow you to experience it for yourself, iterate, experience again, and that's how you develop these skills. So really what that is about is creating the environment for our students to be able to experience and develop these skills in themselves. Now, what does that mean to create an environment? It's really about connectivity. We're connecting them to experience and expertise globally that um, acts as a role model for them, to show them what success looks like, to show what successful people do, how they act, how they do these kinds of things, and also to act as mentors and advisors to them to help them to develop those skills. So that's really what it's about. It's about developing all those skills by creating the right environment for people to experience it for themselves. Now, the interesting thing about where we're currently at is in having to do it all from our back porches. You can certainly do a lot more, right? I mean, we run a certificate in entrepreneurship, which used to be 100 people from our local region. The current certificate has people from Singapore, China, Spain, Switzerland, you name it, kind of stuff. So it certainly, expands your reach and the scale at which you can do things. What it does not allow you to do is to get that kind of, I don't know what the right word for it is, but that personal experience of having a personal interaction. There is a lot to that. And those kinds of intangible learnings that you get from actually having people in a room looking at each other are valuable. And we're trying to figure out how do you recreate that in a situation where people can't actually be in a room together. And I don't think I haven't yet seen a technology which 100% substitutes for that yet. But that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, it's I'm sure it's been a whirlwind as it has been for pretty much all educators, right? That's saying, okay, now we have to, even if you were nearly fully virtual previously, or just somewhat virtual previously, now it's like, hey, we are that's it, we are fully virtual.
Right.
Something that's interesting to me is the concept of the opportunity, the silver lining of the scale that digital does provide, like you said. Um, are there any specific techniques or learnings that you've seen already that are effective? Now, I understand that we can't have the same exact feelings of being in a room together. Like you said, that could even be learn. You talked about experience. That could be learning to read a room. Like that.
Right.
That's an experience, right? Learning
Right.
learning when to learning when to pipe up, or learning when to or speak up, or stay quiet. All things that you definitely learn mostly from physical interactions inside a room.
Right.
Have there been some tricks or tips or things that you're seeing with your students or your faculty that as you've gone virtual, that are mitigating, or at least helping to bring it to and feel more human and feel more normal, versus it being this big wall between us, or between you and your students?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of platforms out there which allow you to facilitate interactions on a number of different levels, right? So there's certain learnings are teachings that you can teach in a much larger group of people through your regular Zoom, like we're doing Zoom now, right?
Hmm.
Um, but how do you then allow people to bring that back into a smaller environment so that they can try it out and experience it for themselves personally? And there are a number of platforms now, certainly, that allow you to go into little side rooms, or to, have sidebar conversations amongst the audience themselves. There's some of these platforms now that are um, allowing the content to survive the actual meeting itself, so people can go back into it, in and out of it, and it stays there over time. We found that to be extremely useful in people being able to go home, think about it, go back in, experience it in a different way, bring their daily experiences to it, and so on. So it's trying to find those kinds of ways for people to internalize and personalize the content that they've learned, which you're never going to do in a room full of 100 people, whether it's virtual or not.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. The,
so
the, the
there,
smaller, yeah, the smaller environment is just gonna. There's
the
certain things,
smaller,
yeah,
the smaller,
certain things an intimate audience allows for, or is better for than an arena. No matter how you slice it, right? So whether that's a traditional classroom of 50 or 100, that's a one to many, or if you had a small pods of maybe 6 or 8 individuals in a small tight room, right?
and it's not just that; it's the what's the word for the sort of the temporal nature of the information, right?
Hmm.
If it's something that disappears as soon as you hit leave meeting kind of thing, the value of that information is diminished. and it's far, far less than if you can go back in and experience that information again and again and again.
Yeah, and I do wonder if there are some advantages to, or enhancements that could be learning digitally. And then for me, I'm still very much I like to have a notebook. I still like to write things down. For
Yep.
me, even when I've been working from home for over 10 years, I still live and die by the pen, because that's how I retain, and that's how I have notes that I
Right.
can go back
Right.
to, even though they're bad chicken scratch. Those are in my brain from our last conversation. And even if I take notes digitally, it's just not the same for me. just not the same. It's just
No,
something
no.
something physical about the memory.
And that's the personal nature of how everybody learns. Whatever platforms it is that we use in the future have to accommodate everybody being different and everybody having a different way of actually internalizing this. And this idea of repetition, I have a 6-year-old in kindergarten, right? And that's how she learns. She learns by repetition. We do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. But that's not limited to kids. We all learn like that. We don't realize it's repetition, but we're applying the same learning to different situations. So we're going to have to develop platforms that allow us to do that and to constantly dip back in. The one piece I have not seen is, and you alluded to it, was that 70% of communication is not verbal at all.
Mm.
It's me looking at you even on the screen here, gives a little bit of that 70% back, but it's not the same as sitting in the room with you. Are people leaning forward? Are they looking out the window? What are the facial cues and so on?
Yeah.
I haven't seen a technology that has gotten us to the point that is the same as personal interaction yet.
Yeah, not quite yet, and we'll see how far it can march and how fast it can march too. One of the
Right.
practices we have at Topcoder, as much as we possibly can, we are a completely virtual company, but we do cameras on at least. It's like if you're in a meeting, of course, if you can't, if you're chowing down lunch, we all work from home, and you want to be respectable and not be on camera, your choice. But the default is, get your butt on camera, be ready to be on camera so you can be
Right.
present. And that, so that, because obviously we're sitting in front of a computer and a phone and notebooks and other things that can distract us while we're at home. And I think for folks who are not used to it, it can be very, very easy to find yourself distracted if you haven't practiced, if you haven't been in a home environment before. I have a 9 and 12-year-old upstairs. My wife is a fitness instructor, so she's teaching digitally now as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the propensity for distraction is there, and that too is just practice. It's it's getting
Right.
yourself, same thing, getting yourself in the right environment so that you can have some quiet and peace and focus time. And then it's practice and really working at not being distracted. But little things such as, hey, camera on, and try to have at least decent lighting. We try to practice those too, just because they do add up to more meaningful conversations. And if we're gonna meet, might as well make it effective. Might as well, it's a plenty of meetings can be emails. So, or a
Sure.
Slack message for that matter.
Well,
So
there is definitely that. I have way too many meetings. But
yeah, that's for certain. We can drown in those. So Paul, another rabbit hole I did want to poke at is one of our best customers, great customer in the Pacific Northwest is T-Mobile, and I had the pleasure of going out to Bellevue. They've done a remarkable job of their their brand, their culture. They like live and die and breathe magenta. Like they all march with that magenta feel to them, and throughout their entire campus, one of the things you'll see up on banners, and if you read, if you talk to anybody there in leadership, it's a lot of it is around the ability and the empowerment to take smart risks. So they use that terminology quite a bit, like, hey, go ahead, take smart risks. I started when you were talking earlier about the characteristics in which the things you're trying to, it's, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe you would say, yes, you can teach somebody that. I almost look at it as like you draw it out of their personality, or you try to magnify it if it's already
yeah.
there and enhance it inside somebody. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I go back to the idea that you're at UCSD, you're creating an environment so they could have real life experiences. And I would assume, you know, um, take risks within the program, even though there's, I'm assuming, some guardrails up and things like that. So how do you pull the levers so that a student inside your program can do so, that they can be empowered to take risks, but at the same time, yes, there's a safety net. However, if it's a full-on safety net, there's really no risk. So what's the balance there in an academic scenario where, to me, when I think of an entrepreneur, I think they've got, at the end of the day, they've got gumption and they're willing to take a risk. They're willing to bet on something they believe in, and they better find something they love and believe in, because that's the passion is going to drive them, and then they'll be able to probably come through it. Whether they win or not,
Yep.
they're going to need that thrust. So how do you environmentally set something up that allows for, the practice of taking risk?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, and that's really what we're trying to do, is to show them that, working in uncertain environments or risky environments is not a bad thing. It can actually help you to become a better person, right, or to become a more successful person. I mean, there's a lot of different answers to that. I mean, from the institutional perspective, first of all, you have to do a number of things. You have to lead by example, right? So, if we're an institution that isn't willing to take risks ourselves, then how are we possibly going to turn around and tell our students to do that? So, for example, we allow students to design the programs. We tell them or we let them tell us, I should say, what it is that we should be doing. And we put resources behind that, and we actually run these programs, and they're not always going to work. I mean, I know that. I can see with some of these programs when some students will come to us, it's like, yeah, it's not going to work, but let's run it in some way that's safe for the students. So you have to lead by example. You also have to show them you believe in them. So that involves giving them the space to make the mistakes that they're going to make, but not turning around and saying, "I told you so" after they do. You know, you will support them in that. They will make mistakes, of course they will. Every entrepreneur makes mistakes, but you have to show them that you believe in them. Um, and then, how do you create an environment that, yes, allows them to do that, but at the same time has a safety net, because these are students, right?
Yeah.
Throughout all of this, the most important thing for all of our students is to get the degree. That's why they're there. So, this is always in the background. Whatever degree it is you're going for, that's the most important thing. And if there is ever a situation where that is becoming compromised because they're doing something else or whatever, we will always bring them back to that. You are here to get your degree.
Yeah.
So we make sure that those kind of very wide guardrails are in there. But we have confidence in them. We show them that we have confidence in them by bringing the outside world to them and by bringing them to the outside world. But we do it in a way that prepares the outside world to expect that these are students, right? So, I mean, if we brought investors in, for example, and they behaved like they would if I was, a regular entrepreneur going out and trying to raise money, it's not going to work, So we prepare the investors. We say, come in, absolutely, give them constructive criticism, tell them where they're going wrong, try and provide some guidelines for how they should pivot or how they should do it in a different way. But please always bear in mind, these are students. They are learning, right? We need you to do it in a way that's respectful of that. So we prepare the people that are coming in, so that we're not just beating these students down if they fail. We allow them to fail. They fail themselves, and we point that out. But we say, now, what did you learn from that? And how can we support you in taking that learning and going to the next thing? So, I mean, there's a lot to how we do that, but those are the things. We're just respectful of the fact that these are students. They are there for a purpose, and this other stuff is secondary to the degree they're going to get, and make sure that all of the interactions they have with the outside world are done in a nuanced way that respects that, right?
Yeah, no, it sounds like you set up just a healthy environment overall that, just again, it's about breeding, it's about breeding that success so that when they do exit, um, I think it's like an erosion of fear, right? And it's, again, it's not, that doesn't mean you become stupid when all fear goes away. And of course,
Right.
you'll never be at a point where all fear is eroded. However, with practice and with precision, you could be the most prepared, right? And then you could
Right.
take your swings with as much oomph as possible. And those are just factors that increase the likelihood that you're going to hit the ball, is what it boils down to.
And if you're paralyzed by the fear of failure, you will never hit the ball,
Correct.
right? Because you're never going to swing at the damn thing. So,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
that's what we try and do. We give them the respect and that to allow them to fail in a somewhat supported environment. so long as they learn from that, and then we support them to take that learning to the next thing.
Yeah.
The people who actually fail through our programs learn more in many ways than the people who were lucky enough and in the right place in the right time to actually make something work first time out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That
it's
makes
really,
sense.
what do they do 3 years after they leave? What do they do 5 years after they leave? That's really the metric of success for us.
Yeah, and the thing that comes through for me is that I feel, we end up working with, well, we work with enterprises. That's at Topcoder. We work with, that's who we cater to, and that's who we work with. And some environments are really strong. Some environments, they have people that are specifically empowered, or teams that are allowed to go use and try external tools, and they are there to be on the edge, and push and develop POCs, and try to get to market faster, and just out innovate. And they become fantastic partners. And then there's the 180, and it doesn't even have to go industry by industry. And it's really not industry by, it's not like, okay, banking is old and stodgy, therefore this, and telemedicine is new and hip, so therefore that. It's actually more company by company. It's more just culturally driven, industry almost be damned. Whether it's a 150-year-old industry or a 5-year-old industry, it's the culture that says, okay, we're allowed to experiment, and we're okay with failure, with rapid learnings, and then taking it and hopefully even parallelizing, or putting in parallel how many times you can attempt something, so that you get to success faster, and you're empowered to do that.
And
So
I'm
yeah,
really glad you brought up the term culture, because that's exactly what we're doing here, right? We're trying to create a culture to allow these people to do exactly what you just said. And if we can do that, and we can incubate people so that they all enter the workforce with that culture ingrained in them, then all of those industries you just described are going to be the better for it, right?
correct. Yeah,
Because they're all going
they'll
to go into
be they'll be
companies.
amplifiers, and they'll have network effects unto themselves. They'll be catalysts within places, because my gut says that the kind of folks who are coming out of your program, who are going to bring that to the enterprise, they're probably going to be rapidly successful. A lot of them are going to be quite successful, and they're going to be successful in a way of recreating that environment for their teams, and then growing teams around that, because they know that it breeds a certain result that is more often than not successful, or at least an environment for a great rapid learning, and then getting to success on the second or third or fourth or fifth, or doesn't really matter, but that next try, which is really
Right.
interesting. And then I do want to ask you too. You mentioned at the onset kind of the size of the program, but I think some of the stats behind that are just really impressive. In terms, I think it will give people a sense of scale of what's going on at UCSD on a yearly basis. When we talked the first time, you were saying, Paul, that somewhere between 40 to 50 companies each and every year are incubated and kind of spawned out of the UCSD program that you lead. Um, how does that fluctuate? Is that pretty consistent? And how has that grown since, say, 2014, when the program started?
Yeah, the numbers, yeah, so you're right. Somewhere between 40 and 50 companies come off campus each year. There's two groups in those companies. That's the ones that come out of the research enterprise, which typically is faculty, professors, and their labs develop the technologies, and then we license technologies into new companies. And the other bucket are the students. So the students themselves come up with their own ideas. They go through our incubator programs. They make companies, and away they go. Over the, say, last 5 years or so, the numbers have close to doubled. Um, and I think that is in large part, well, it's because of a lot of different things, but the leadership in the university has created this culture that you just described. I'm allowed to go away and make programs and fail. I mean, they don't like if I fail too much, mind you,
Sure.
but you're allowed to experiment, and hopefully you learn and you create better programs. And that culture pervades across the entire university. And I think that has helped all of the schools, engineering and business and health and medicine and so on, to create this environment, which has resulted in this almost doubling of companies that are coming off the campus now. And it's terrific. In 2017, the last year we had complete stats for the country. Only MIT created more companies than UC San Diego. So
Yeah,
we think we're doing the right thing.
I think it's one of those things where stats don't lie, right? So those some really compelling stats. So I think it'd be really cool to understand, what do you think the next 5 years for the program holds, or maybe it's shorter term. I'll allow you to, put up, if you want to put time around that, but how do you see it progressing further still? What are some of the big ways in which you'd like to see it progress? What, do you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, that's about as big as it can be, or as impactful as it could be? Or is it a continuous, evolution and continuous improvement cycle? And if it is the latter, then kind of what's peaking you right now? How do you want to see it progress and grow from here?
Well, I mean, if if we were maxed out, I'd leave, right? There'd be
Yes.
nothing else to do. I mean, so somebody else would do it, right?
Yeah.
The two big keywords for me over the next 5 years are scale and diversity. Um, how do you bring this kind of an environment to more and more students? We probably reach about, I don't know, I'll just say 3,000 students a year in a real sense on campus. There are 40,000 students on campus. How do I get to 10,000? How do I get to 20,000 students? And this gets back to the original conversation that you had with me, which was how do you go virtual? How do you scale? How do you bring new platforms to allow more people to interact in real and impactful ways? And that was the conversation we had. We're figuring this out, and therein lies the opportunity of this crisis, is to accelerate that kind of conversation. If you're relying on putting people in the room entirely, scaling is very, very difficult. So we have to figure out a different way of doing it. The second half of it is diversity. Um, Still, not unlike any other program in a large university, I suspect the diversity is not where we would like it to be. We don't have enough women engaging in this word innovation or entrepreneurship. Even though companies with women founders tend to be more successful, we are still in low double digits, I believe, in terms of the companies across the country that are founded with women founders. That's hideous. So we're losing out on half the country, right? But also there's diversity, ethnic diversity, and a big one for me is the diversity of the disciplines that people are coming from. We can fill a room with engineers all day long. When they hear entrepreneurship, they want to make widgets, and it's fantastic, and they'll solve all the world's problems, right? And again, I'm not diminishing that at all, but what I would like to see is far more that poli-sci people, economics people, dance and theater people, oceanographers and everybody else all feel that they have a role to play and they have a contribution to make in this conversation of innovation and entrepreneurship. We're beginning to see that, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. And that's an issue of language and focus. If you go in and say, right, I want to develop a program which is going to create prototypes and companies to solve the urban mobility problem, you ain't going to get no dancers or theater people or even economists, frankly, joining that program. But if you go in and say, I'm developing a program where students can come in and engage with the community and provide solutions to specific challenges, that's an entirely different conversation. And you don't use the word entrepreneurship at all. So what we're looking in there is for a new language of inclusivity to increase the diversity of people that engage. Because until we do that, as a country, we're not going to be where we should be. And it's not just at a university level, this is throughout society. If we don't have that inclusion, that diversity, and that scale of people, and that welcoming, I'm going to throw it in there as an immigrant, and that welcoming to people from other parts of the world to help us achieve what we need to achieve, then we're not going to get there.
I think some of the psychological framing of how problems or challenges or opportunities are presented, like you said there, if you frame something too acutely, very few people are going to feel they're up to that challenge, particularly, right? I'm not an expert in that. I could never, right? They can't,
Yep.
because they can't envision themselves having an impact there, or maybe even a desire to go solve that particular problem. However, opening the net, psychologically opening the net wider through language and probably just marketing, just getting into different people's ideas that they can have an impact in a different way, even though or a path that they might not have taken that could have a much larger societal impact that they just maybe weren't thinking of yet. It's a cool challenge to go solve for, and
Yeah.
it's a bit psychological. It's a bit marketing. I think it's all around framing and language,
Hmm.
and inviting those people in, and seeing where it leads. Because I'm with you that you could probably bet your bottom dollar it will lead to some exciting innovations and breakthroughs, and certainly, of course, just different points of view, which we know will spur a lot of ideas. And I'm a big fan of looking at near field um, near field applications. So somebody who learns something in a different field, it could be adjacent, or it could be even a couple of steps away from adjacent, and then reapplying those learnings into something that others have been maybe studying for 20, 30 years, but doing so with blinders on, and
Hmm.
doing so without diversity of thought. And then other people could come from the outside world, and a learning that they absorbed in their niche, in their domain, can be applied, or something from it can be used that really puts that
Right.
we can really solve. And we see it all the time. We run a lot of innovation challenges on Topcoder, some of them in the data science category. And the vast majority of the data science challenges that get solved, while they're all like strong mathematicians solving those types of challenges, we'll be doing like a biochem challenge. The winners, they don't have domain in biochemistry most often. They have deep domains somewhere else, and broad enough curiosity and mathematics base that they can apply what they've learned in one scenario and apply it to a biochem or genetics challenge,
Right.
even though they're not classically trained at all in that domain. And they will typically blow away the results that you would just get if you were only confined to people that were subject matter experts. And it's because of the application of thought and how they approach a problem with something that somebody who's just in that more narrow field probably was just never exposed to. So there's great truth in what you're saying, just naturally, that cross pollination is going to breed it's going to innately breed innovations, and really set a lot of ideas free in a way that, unless you're open to that, then you're probably being too close-minded. There's
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
there's such opportunity there.
And it's that diversity of thought and diversity of perspective that really leads to true disruption and true innovation. Just because somebody's looking at the same thing in a different way, you never know what, and that actually, if you carry that one step further for us in the academic world, it kind of what's the word? It kind of throws into question the way that we educate people.
Yep.
Right? We tend to, as you go further and further in education, you get deeper and narrower and more focused. Is that really what we're looking for as a society? If you go back to before the Industrial Revolution, gentlemen went and read and eaten kind of stuff. I mean, it was an entirely different, much more rounded sort of form of education, which taught people to think.
Yep.
And you'd wonder, have we lost something in moving away from that model?
No, I'm with you, and I actually think that a lot of the future skills that you're talking about, circling back to those core skills, it's going to be around folks who really understand communication, who really, and again, getting back to what you said earlier too, it cannot be just virtual. I think there's a lot of hyperbole, especially right now, saying we will never get back to normal because of the virus. And of course, the reality is there's just going to be a new future. That's all that means. And getting back with people and cheersing over a pint, and cheering with 55,000 people in a stadium, and hugging people that you want to hug because you haven't seen them in a year or so, or a week, doesn't really matter. That will all come back. That will all we'll have that again.
Of course,
I'm a firm optimist there.
it better.
No,
I,
it will. That
need
will come back. I will stake everything I have that we'll get back there, and we'll get back there sooner than I think we all potentially think too. But I'm an optimist. I'm definitely glass half full there. I believe it. I believe in the
but I mean,
folks.
normal is always changing, right? The normal we
Correct.
had in January was completely alien to somebody 20 years ago.
Yeah,
We just,
100%.
as you're living it, you may not realize it, but normal changes all the time. So this
Correct.
is just another catalyst in changing normal.
Yep. And at the core of all that, I do really agree with the idea that those with the broader skills, and those with a really really sharpened communication skills going into the future are going to be those that can succeed, especially if they're coming through a program like yours, getting the assets, getting the tutelage, and again, that practice that your program at UCSD provides, I think is that environment, plus just great practice and communications are those in the future that are going to succeed quite a bit versus some of the folks that are just doing the really narrow focus work. There's always need for specialists,
Right.
and then with platforms and with talent platforms out there, generalists who have great comm skills that know how to access specialists and use them and bring them in and out of work and be hyper effective with them because they have the great soft skills along with that. I think they're sitting in a really interesting pole position, and it sounds
Yep.
to me like the environment and the program that you're the vice chair of at UCSD is really helping people get there and prepare them for the future. So I think it's a great thing you have going there. So Paul, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today and joining us on the Uprisor podcast. Paul, if folks want to find out more about you, follow you socially, find out about maybe writings or videos or programs at UCSD, what's the best way that they could find out more about you and the program that you're in charge of?
One of the easiest ways is just go to the website, which is innovation.ucsd.edu.
Okay, cool. We'll put that in the footnotes as well. So thanks so much, Paul. Have a stay safe out there. Enjoy.
You too.
You got the beautiful weather, so stay safe and have fun and get the beautiful sunshine. And if we ever do get the chance to physically meet, I'll come out to the West Coast hopefully soon. And maybe I could buy you a pint or something like that, and we can enjoy one at a pub.
Well, do remember I'm Irish, so anybody who offers to buy me a pint will buy me a pint.
There it is. Perfect. All right, Paul. Thanks so much, and have a great day.